Good evening and welcome to Issues That Matter, Caring for the Caregivers. This event is brought to you by Snow Isle Libraries and supported by the Snow Isle Libraries Foundation. We're happy you're joining us here tonight for one of the last two Issues That Matter events. We adapted the series for online programs and chose the topic of pandemic pressures supporting community and family mental health to address the challenges of the last year. Our final events present different angles of the same topic, helping those who find themselves caring for others and find it difficult to take care of themselves. This Saturday at 10 a.m., we'll talk about tips and resources for anyone caring for children during the pandemic. Tonight, we've brought together three panelists who will share information and resources for those of us caring for adults. It could be an elderly parent with dementia, a seriously ill family member, or a loved one with mental illness. The loss of access to usual resources has made these challenging situations downright overwhelming. Taking care of ourselves often falls to the bottom of the priority list, and we end up damaging our own health as we burn out. Our panelists tonight will talk about how to care for ourselves when we take care of others, setting boundaries, seeking help, and what resources are available. They will also answer as many of your questions as they can during our time together. During the presentation, your microphones are muted and you can enter your questions and comments into chat at any time. They will be visible to only the panelists and Snow Isle Libraries staff, Andy, Incian, Kurt, and myself, Anne, who will collect the questions for the Q&A part of the event. We understand this topic can be very personal and we will do our best to ensure that your questions are anonymous. If your question is for a specific panelist, please let us know. We will also be sharing links to resources and library information in chat throughout the event. This evening's program will be recorded for later viewing and will be available on the Snow Isle Libraries YouTube channel in a few days. I especially want to thank our panelists for taking the time to be here with us this evening. This event could not have happened without the three of you. So if you please welcome tonight, Keith Binkley, Board President of Snohomish County Chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. Sandra Huber, Community Engagement Manager with Verdant Health Commission. And Beth Rahi, Case Manager for Family Caregiver Support Program, Tailored Support for Older Adults with Island Senior Resources. Thank you, and Keith, you can go ahead and take it away.
Okay, great. Hey, greetings, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this presentation. I tend to be long-winded sometimes when I start talking about my journey, so I'm gonna set the timer just so that we get a chance for everybody to share their experience and have plenty of time for questions. So that is my intent, really. Is I'm not a professional. I'm a parent of a 31-year-old son that lives with a mental illness. So of that 31 years, the first 17 prior to diagnosis, I just was in the role of a parent, and did followed all the classic parenting rules, and did the best I could. And then about 17, when my son was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I kind of entered into the realm of what you would call caregiving. So obviously still parenting, but an added dimension of really deep care for my son and his well-being, more so than typical parenting. And then also just advocating for his well-being. So, I during that journey, I've learned that through my affiliation with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, that really talking about your story and sharing it with others really has better equipped me for this journey. So there's lots of things that I've learned on the way, and probably first and foremost, when I found myself in this situation, I was floundering, and I reached out, and the more I reached out, the more I was rewarded. So I made connections with people. I started sharing my experience. I realized I wasn't alone. I started, building a support network. I learned about classes and programs and resources, and that really kind of filled me and or at least put me in a better position to deal with this challenge. So it's been a journey, and there's been ups and downs and challenges along the way. But I feel like, and there have been times when my capacity has really been challenged. There've been, I wouldn't drag you through the extreme events, but there have been, there's, jail time, car accidents, multiple hospitalizations. But it has tested me, like nothing else in life. I've learned a lot. I've, harnessed tools that kind of help me build resiliency, stay in the game. The reason I am a big advocate for self-care is, you would do anything for a loved one, but you need to always be mindful of the long game. And if you're seeing signs of that aren't healthy, or you're showing signs of burning out, that's just a call. That's like your dashboard, your red light coming on your engine, saying you really need to address that. Looking out for yourself first and foremost, while it almost sounds like a selfish way of being, it is, you turn that love on yourself, you're better able to care for your loved one. So I've had lots of time for reflection over this journey. I've had I've uncovered dimensions to myself that I never envisioned. The person I am now is vastly different than the person I was, when my son was 17. Vastly different. I was, followed a traditional way of parenting, following the way that I was parented, and I learned that just doesn't fly in this situation. So I have definitely evolved as an individual. I like who I've evolved to be. I have learned a lot along the way. The National Alliance on Mental Illness has been a guide. So that's why I continue to, I facilitate support groups, teach classes. That's how I became the president of the organization. I just believe it's a very organic way of helping others that are, find themselves on this journey. So, that's the short little plug for the organization, but it's true and real because it has, really served me well. And, the hallmark messages are, talk to others, seek resources, share. There's power in sharing. Be authentic. Don't just feel like you need to carry this burden solely on your shoulders. So that's my introduction. Again, it's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the conversation tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Keith. I believe that I am next, and I am going to share my PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully, everybody can see it. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time of being here with us today. This is a very important topic. And we hear a lot about what we should be doing and how we should be doing some of these things. And I wanted to take a little different approach. First, introducing myself. My name is Sandra Huber, and I am the Community Engagement Manager for Verdant Health. And we take a lot of pride on offering all kinds of services. Not direct services, but resources for the community. And it's given me a great opportunity working with diverse communities that are ideas and communities of color of what it is to find peace and healing during very difficult times might seem or sound a little different than what our brothers and sisters who belong to this culture that are not immigrants may even be thinking about. And many times when we think about ancestral traditions, we tend to conjure all kinds of ideas. But first of all, that's me at 1 year old, and I'm originally from Panama. And you can see the map where my tiny little country at the end of Central America is. And there was all kinds of ideas and ways in which we took care of each other that became resources for me once I moved to the United States to go to college 34 years ago. And a lot I didn't know. And just like Keith shared, I also have had mental health issues in my family. I have had a daughter also who is bipolar. And these difficult times that we've all been facing in the last year have made it particularly difficult when we are dealing with COVID, also all the economic impact and all the different things that have come up as a result of this pandemic and all the consequences that have been brought along. So part of what I found myself having to do a little over a year ago was reaching back into my ancestral traditions, the things that I know in my family have been used through difficult times to manage stress and take care of myself. And it's interesting when we think about ancestral traditions, many of us think of specific things like ceremonies that are done in particular cultures. And I wanted to invite everyone to consider that when we embrace the idea that we hear every time, for those of you who have had the opportunity to fly, when the flight attendant tells you that in case of an emergency, you need to consider putting your mask on first, I wanted to invite you to consider that there is no us without you. So it's important that you take into consideration the kinds of things that you can do for yourself. And they don't have to be anything fancy or anything expensive. I know when I talk to my community, and I belong and identify as a Afro-Latina, when I talk to the Latinx community, the first thing that I hear is, well, I can do self-care because their idea of self-care is a manicure or a pedicure or a facial. Well, we can scream into a pillow. We can drink a cup of hot herbal tea. We can take a deep breath, or you can dance, you can move. But one of the most important things is to allow yourself to feel, because if you don't feel, then you cannot fill with healing and you are not able to give out of an empty cup. So deep breaths or something as simple as smiling. Our bodies don't know when we smile that we have no reason to smile in that moment. And all those chemicals that make us happy start acting. So another thing that I have found very helpful is counting my blessings. And I found a recording on YouTube about it's a thank you meditation. And I didn't realize how many things I can add to my list of blessings. And after 10 or 15 simple things like, the air in my lungs, the water in my cup, the fact that I can read, the ability to write. There's so many things to be grateful for, that in those moments when you think you are being asked to do you can find within you the strength to keep going. Sometimes the smallest things can bring you lots of joy and peace. And I wanted to share something that is very close to my heart. My abuelita has been gone now for about 34 years. She passed away a few months after I left Panama to come to the United States. But I remember that there was this joke that we had in my family, that anything that ailed you, my grandma would just put some Vicks vapor rub on it. And I used to think this was the magic cure for everything, because whether it was cramps or a headache, it didn't matter that the smell was so strong and burning my eyes. But it was the time that my abuelita, that my grandma put into caring for me, rubbing that. And that is a tradition that I have passed on to my daughter, who's 19 and who hates the smell of Vicks, but she also recognizes, like I did as a child, that is that connection with the other person that really, really matters. So for those of us who still have our family members or the people that we care for, it's important that we find our own rhythm in caring for them, and what it is of those small things that we can do that don't take a lot of time, but it signify, it's like our psyche immediately knows, oh, I'm putting myself number one. And that could make a whole lot of difference. So if you have any questions, my information is here, and I thank you for listening.
I don't know if I'm being shared yet or not. But my name is Beth Rahi. I am a case manager for 2 different programs within Island County. They're working with Island Senior Resources. Island Senior Resources is a small nonprofit in Island County that contracts with our local area agency on aging to administer several state programs. It operates on a combination of state funding and donations. Both programs I case manage for are designed to assist caregivers in their role as caregiver. Caring for the caregiver is my specialty and my passion. I have a personal history as a family caregiver, which drives my passion for this work. In all my years as a caregiver, I had no idea that help was available. That said, I must confess that I am more than a little bit of a control freak, and I don't know that if I'd known about them, that I would have used them. Having personally experienced caregiver burnout, I have the ability to understand the caregiver experience. I've been on that side. However, no 2 situations are the same. My experience with 2 different family members who were both diagnosed with the same thing, but had 2 very different experiences, taught me that every situation is different. The important thing is that help is available. It is important for me to note that I am a case manager, not a social worker, which means my degree is not in counseling. I used to be a care supervisor for 2 different in-home care agencies where I met my former boss, Chastity Smith. At that time, Chastity was the manager for the Aging and Disability Resource Program with Island Senior Resources, and the agency I worked with was a contracted provider. Chastity had a vision for helping the Family Caregiver Support Program to grow by creating a position that was dedicated to this program within Island Senior Resources. With this shared passion for caring for the caregiver, we expanded to the services that included an increase in the utilization of support groups, the lending library, teaching of powerful tools for caregiver class, and more in order to help more caregivers. When I was a family caregiver, I didn't know that any of these programs existed. And when I was given an opportunity to be a case manager and advocate for this program at Island Senior Resources, I jumped at that opportunity. Initially, my position was part-time. Since Island Senior Resources made that decision to give family caregiver support a dedicated case manager, the program has grown approximately 500% in 4 years. We now have a second full-time case manager, Lucero Morales. Family caregiver support is a federally mandated program, which basically means that the federal government says each state has to have this program, but they leave it to the state to figure out how to pay for it. We're lucky that in Washington state, they take it seriously. Washington state went so far as to promote this program to the federal government and ask that they be allowed to do a pilot Medicaid program. That program is the Tailored Support for Older Adults program. So family caregiver support is unique because as long as you are caring for a loved one, whether it's a partner, parent, grandparent, child, or friend, you matter. You can get information and resources without regards to your income or assets. Paid services are provided on a sliding scale, with some services being free regardless of income or resources. Caregivers often tell me they don't qualify before any program has even been discussed because they have a misconception that all programs are income and asset-based. This isn't true for family caregiver support. While Tailored Support for Older Adults is a very similar program, because it's federally funded, it has some additional qualifications that are required. That one does have an income and asset limit. It's not your responsibility as a caregiver to figure out which program you qualify for. There is no wrong door, and you can find help through both calling Home and Community Services. No matter where you live in the state of Washington, there's a Home and Community Services number, or going to washingtonconnections.org. If you live in Island County, Lucero and I are available to help. I am fortunate enough to case manage both of these programs. Because it's caring for a caregiver, it helps me to take all of my experiences from my life as a family caregiver and put them to use. I feel like all of the pain and suffering and joy and hardship and all the aspects of it are now being able to be used to help other people. I also get to assist caregivers by helping facilitate the support groups and co-facilitate the Powerful Tools for Caregiver classes. There's going to be a link included for that. On that webpage for Powerful Tools, they post all the upcoming classes. Our next class starts next Thursday, March 18th on Zoom. You can register through that class through Island Senior Resources website or by calling our main number, 360-321-1600. That class is open to anyone who accesses and registers. There is a limit on how many people we can have in the class. One issue I often run into is that people don't think of themselves as caregivers. They see themselves as partners or spouses, children, parent, grandchildren, grandparent. You don't have to determine what the hardest part for them is, to see themselves as a caregiver and not just a family member or a loved one. It doesn't matter which role you're in. If you're caring for somebody that has got a chronic disease, that's part of our job to help you. No one really volunteers to be a family caregiver. It happens when life changes and there is a diagnosis. Sometimes it happens quickly, like with a heart attack. Other times it's a gradual process, like with dementia. I know I never really saw it as a choice, but as a responsibility. Accepting help is not being irresponsible. It's the opposite. And I speak from experience. One of the other things that comes into play, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, is that palliative care is an important aspect that is available, and so is hospice. I've experienced both of those programs, and I think that I highly recommend them. There are programs such as getting legal assistance to help plan for the long haul. But as the other panelists mentioned, it's important to get help for yourself so that you can be there to help in the future. There are horrible statistics about how often caregivers actually die or get significantly ill before the care receiver passes away or recovers. And the important thing is you don't want to become a secondary victim to the illness. So let us help.
Thank you, Keith, Sandra, and Beth. It was so wonderful to hear your viewpoints, and I can't wait to hear the rest of what you have to share with us tonight. We have some questions that we sent you in advance, so we'll talk about those. And just a reminder for everyone here with us tonight, do put your questions into the chat. We'll get to those at the end of the event. So I'm gonna read these questions and just kind of do a round robin. Keith, we're gonna start with you. I can see you in an order on my screen, which may not be the same order other people are seeing. So I will call on you. So our first question is, when we agree to help take care of a family member, we don't realize that it can easily become 24/7 care. How do we hold on to our own lives while caring for the people we are expected to love the most?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I just want to say, right off the bat, it is a special honor to be, on the panel with Beth and Sandra, because I think we're a lot of commonalities in the messaging that we're giving here, and it's good to hear it from other sources. And I think, Beth, you said it, that this, when you frame the question, do you agree? I mean, I think this is something that just happens. This is life, right? So you may all of a sudden, you're a family member, and all of a sudden you find yourself in this caregiving role. And that was my experience. And it wasn't, I would say there have been many times when I've been challenged extremely. So, and, I have given up a lot, but it's kind of, what comes with the territory. You're like our organizations all exist for trying to preserve the family and the integrity of the family and keep everybody looking out for each other. So if you find yourself in the caregiving role, you just want to do your best to, it is a challenge. There is, the potential for burnout is real, but you want to continually check in with yourself, have others that can look out for you, talk with friends. Friends will say, I'm concerned. I had a friend say to me, have you thought about seeing a therapist, which led to me seeing a therapist. So it is big. It is big. I don't want to make, light of the challenge in any way, but it's not insurmountable. You're not alone. There are other people that have been down this path. There's power in sharing your experience. There's great power in talking, great power in, a support group. So multitude of resources out there. The awareness is far greater for these type of challenges than it ever was before. So, when it lands in your lap, I think it's just a matter of put your seatbelt on, be prepared, do everything you can to equip yourself, and just look out for yourself, because you can't be there for others unless if you're not there for yourself first. So those are my 2 cents. I'll share with, obviously I'd like to hear from Sandra and Beth on that too.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. And I think you made some really good points, but I would like to add my 2 cents as well, is that in our culture, unfortunately, we tend to see things more from an individualist perspective, and we burden ourselves with the thought that we need to have it all figured out. If this is your spouse, your mom, or anyone that you love or care about, we put up on ourselves the idea that we should be able to do it. Not only should we be able to do it, but we should know how to do it. And if there's one thing I want you to remember from today's presentation and conversation we're having, is that there is a reason why these services are out there. You were never expected to do this alone. You were never meant to burden yourself with the idea that you should know and have all the answers. So my invitation, as I share in my brief presentation, is remember to take care of yourself. Something as simple as drinking water, going for a walk, taking a deep breath. There are so many things that could put you in a position where you can reach out for support. Talk to your friends, talk to the people that have been through it, and release the shame that sometimes comes with not knowing what to do and sometimes not even where to start. And the resources that will be shared and have been shared tonight, and some of what both Keith and Beth have said, are important to keep in mind, because we don't choose our challenges most of the time. Like Keith said, they just happen. And under any other circumstances, we wouldn't be expected to know what to do and where to go. So be open, know you're not alone, and you were not meant to deal with this alone.
Yeah, I was just gonna tag on that. It's especially hard for men, I think. I mean, I think men have a tendency to be real fix-it oriented. Just let me, they're just looking for a quick solution. Show me how to fix it. And I think, in my journey, I've learned that if I adopt more of the style of women, and conversing, sharing, pouring it out there, crying, whatever, it really it prevents me from burning out. I just wanted to throw that out there too. So because it seems like all too often, the support groups are largely attended by women, because I think women see the value, and men, I'm hopeful that they this is something that we can look forward to changing on the horizon. We're all in it together.
I think I'll go ahead and jump in now. When in my job, I deal with, or I help a lot of caregivers who often get told by the hospital, or, here, your caregiver's being, or your loved one's being released. They need 24/7 care. Sign here, have a nice day. And they have no concept of where to even begin. That's okay, because that's what we're here for. The reality is, most people at some point when in their caregiving journey don't know where to start. I've been there where I couldn't even open my mail because I couldn't think of what my next step was. It's normal. And if nothing else, understand that your feelings are valid and your feelings are normal. Everybody who's been in these situations feels that sense of, where do I even begin? Help me find a way. And it's normal to need to have the answers more than once. I've thrown out a whole bunch of information today, and it happens on the phone. And I tell my caregivers, you know what? If you have to ask me 16 times the same question, that's normal. I've been there. I know what it feels like. One of the most important things to remember is it's a marathon, not a sprint. Caregiving is something that people don't volunteer for. My favorite analogy is there's a Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's standing there chomping on his carrot, and it's like they have him like as if they're in the military. And somebody says, we need to volunteer. And the whole line steps back and he's happily chewing on his carrot. And, oh, I guess I volunteered. And that's how I felt as a caregiver. I didn't volunteer for it. And everybody was like, oh, well, you don't have to do this. Really? Because it sure felt like nobody else was going to be doing it if I didn't. What was the alternative? And so there are a lot of people, very well-meaning people, that will say lots of the words should. Be aware that often should has a sense of guilt to it. We tell it to ourselves all the time. Well, I should be more capable. I should be able to do this. Well, I could ask for help. If I were you, I would call and get some help. I would go to support group. Would you like me to go with you? Because making that first step can be really hard. And that's something to understand. That's normal. It's hard to admit that we don't have all the answers. I was like a 2-year-old when I was doing the journey, saying, I do it myself. I took great pride in this ability to manage it all, but I couldn't, and I didn't do it very well. Accepting that your needs are important, that you have value. So often, caregivers I talk to break down when I let them know that, yeah, all the doctors, everybody, when they call, all the friends, so how is your loved one? I say, how are you? And they break down because it's been a really long time since they felt like that was that important, because all of the other crisis was more urgent. It's about putting, we try to treat it as if it's an acute illness situation. Oh, it's an emergency. We handle it all right now. It's a crisis. Well, at some point, crisis turns to long-term and it becomes chronic. In Powerful Tools, they use the phrase acute versus chronic. When it's a chronic illness, it's time to start thinking of, how am I going to manage this? It's about turning your life from surviving it to actually still having a life and being able to feel important and valuable in your own right, and that your life is more than caregiving, because caregiving can become all-consuming. And it's just natural because we love. And loving is good, getting burned out sucks. I'll just tell you from personal experience. Self-care is not selfish. That's one of the things I think both Sandra and Keith have said. So hear those words. It's not selfish, it's essential. What you're feeling is valid. And again, put your oxygen mask on first, because it doesn't help if both of you pass out.
Great, thank you all. As I'm seeing you all nodding and smiling as each other are talking and really reinforcing everything that you're sharing. That's wonderful. Sandra, we'll go ahead and start with you for the next question. And this question is, we understand that self-care is important, but it often feels like just one more thing to do. How do I add another thing to already feeling overwhelmed?
I think that's a question that I hear often, and in communities of color, particularly when many people are struggling to survive. The idea of adding one more thing to do or one more thing away from your caregiving role can seem a very difficult thing to do. And that's what I wanted to focus today in my brief presentation, that it's the small things that build up that keep you going, because a manicure, a pedicure, a facial, or a trip, or for those who can't afford it, it's a momentary thing. And as Beth and Keith both have shared, we're talking about a marathon, not a sprint. It's a long race. So how do you do the things that will keep you going? And as I said before, drinking your water, remembering to breathe. I remember when I was having my challenges with my daughter and her diagnosis, I found myself holding my breath, and somehow I thought that made sense, to go around life. And that puts your body into this really reactive lack of oxygen, really, truly. It is. So my consideration with that, somebody told me, whatever you do, make it part of your day. Don't add to anything outside of, if you can at the moment, because it could feel burdensome. And sometimes we feel guilty for taking that moment for ourselves, and we have to get over that. But that could be a barrier to doing the simple things that sometimes we take our focus away from because we're caring for someone else. So the small things are what keep you going every single day. And you have to, don't forget your own doctor appointments. Don't forget your mammogram. Don't forget if you need to have vitamins and that yearly checkup. All those things are what are going to keep you going so you can be there. And sometimes, yes, it will be an added thing to what you have to do. But that's where, as Beth and Keith both have said, it's not selfish, because if you don't take care of yourself, then you won't. I mean, and we know that logically, right? I don't think I'm preaching to the choir. We all know that. But when it comes to the application of it, we immediately go, not all of us, but some of us do, go into, well, that hour I took to go for a walk, it's an hour I could have done, blah, 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 blah. So it's important that we know ourselves well enough to know, is it a call to a friend? Is it a full glass of water that I haven't had in a few days? Is it sleep? Do I have to talk to my doctor about my sleep? Do I have to remember to make my appointment for that mammogram because I'm not sure when I had the last one? All those things are going to keep you going in the long run.
I'll be happy to jump in and, you know, the take home is, you know, so we are bringing forward our experience in hopes that it will help others. And the reality is, you know, we don't have a dashboard that indicates, you know, where we are in our own well-being. You know, a lot of times, you know, the tendency is to push yourself beyond what's good for you, to a level that's beyond what's good for you. So, you know, self-care is important, but it's essential, really. I mean, it is. So, you know, we have been challenged, and, you know, there've been ups and downs. And, you know, I think the way I often frame it is, you know, it's about how resilient you are. And so if you find yourself that your experience that you're frequently being depleted. I mean, I have been just like, you know, unable to get out of bed, just completely exhausted, you know, had, you know, eye twitches, inability to sleep, you know, just little things, you know, irritability. You know, if you start getting little signs, it's a sign that, you know, you probably need to look into actions that are going to promote your own self-care and build your resiliency. You know, and when we hold support groups, you know, we typically close out with, you know, what action are you going to do to demonstrate self-care between now and the next support group? And it's interesting, people will genuinely wrestle with coming up with something. You know, it's just, you know, I really don't have, you know, nothing's coming to mind, you know, but it is beyond important. It really is essential. And, you know, especially in light of, you know, it is the marathon. It is a long game. So you don't want to say like, I'll get through this crisis and then I'll schedule my self-care time down the road and refill my tank. You know, you need to, you know, go on walks, meditate, drink water, seek professional help if appropriate, talk with friends. Self-care is essential.
And I wanted to tag what Keith just said. If you can think of this, so I don't like to compare humans to machines, but what would you do if the light in your car and the gas tank came on? Would you expect the car to keep on going? Would it be reasonable for that to, if you only have 30 miles worth of gas to get you 100 miles? It wouldn't, and it could potentially damage the car. So just like we wouldn't do that for our cars, wouldn't it be that much more important for us as human beings to find the support that we need, the resources that we need, um, and the self, and maybe we need to change the word self-care. Maybe I don't know, somebody can suggest something different, because I think there's a tendency to equate self-care with selfishness. And I think that there isn't anything more selfless than taking care of yourself so you can be here and you can be here for those that you love.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the empty tank, because that's one of the things, and Keith went through really a lot of the symptoms and signs of burnout. When you can't sleep, when you have trouble keeping your mind on what you're doing, when everything seems like it takes more effort than it normally would, where you're feeling kind of lethargic, or everything's a big deal. When you're in pain or you're exhausted, losing your keys is suddenly a catastrophe. So all of those signs and symptoms tell us, hey, pay attention to you. Pay attention to ourselves. One of the things that I've noticed when I work with caregivers, and it's included in the Powerful Tools class, which I keep promoting, but it's a phenomenal class. And it's all very much stuff we all know, but we don't do. And part of the problem is that we get into the shoulds. I should. And if we let self-care become a should, the odds are of us procrastinating it, we start to resent it. Well, all these people are saying, oh, well, you should take care of yourself. Duh. Of course, I used to get very angry when my sister would tell me, hey, you need to take better care of yourself. Well, when? How? Explain this to me. One of the tricks that I've found working with people, though, is make sure that you make a list of things you want to do. Just make it in a long list. Because when it comes having just something that's little that's yours, whether it's taking time to read a book or going outside for a walk or whatever it may be, art, talking to a friend on the phone, caregiving, one of the tendencies caregivers have a tendency to do, and I was guilty of it, is think that nobody's going to understand, or just to self-isolate because I'm exhausted. I don't feel like I have the energy to connect to those people. And so having that list of what I want to do, what's going to make me feel better about just life. Some people it's, their faith and practicing that faith. Sometimes it's reaching out, but I have a friend that just mowing her grass was actually self-care because she felt like she accomplished something. She liked how it looked, and it gave her time to turn her brain off and just mow the grass. So it's not, nobody else can determine what self-care is but you. And it has to be something you want to do. That's it. That's all it is. That's self-care. I did something I wanted to do because I wanted to do it. Not because it was a should, not because somebody told me it would be good for me, but because it was something I wanted. It's mine. Having something that's ours gives us purpose and helps us to feel like an individual again, instead of just part of this caregiving cycle. The other thing is make a list of things that people can do to help. Everybody will always come to you and they say, how can I help? And they mean well, they do. They want to help. The problem that I had when I was doing it was, if I could think of anything, which most of the time I couldn't right then on the spot, it was something that was extremely specific. And so I set myself up for failure. It became this self-fulfilling prophecy, because I'd ask, somebody would say, hey, what can you do? Hey, can you do this very specific thing? And they would be like, I would love to, but that does, I'm busy that day or time, or that one thing that I asked was so specific that they couldn't do it. And when they couldn't do it, then I was justified in saying, nobody can help me. I'm on this all alone. See, they say they want to help, but they can't. Well, I have to give them things. If I give them a whole list of 20 things, or even 3, can you do one of these 3? Can you call me when you're at the grocery store to see if you can pick up milk and eggs for me? Because that'll save me a trip. That's a simple thing somebody could do. Can you invite, come over and have coffee with me here because I can't get out? That's something else. So it's thinking and sometimes being creative of what can people do to help, because those also help you to feel valid. They help you to feel important, because now you're not in it alone. And it also gifts them with the opportunity to help. I got a lot from caregiving. Yes, I complained endlessly about it at times, but I got a lot from it. I have amazing memories from some of that time. Not all of them were good, but a lot of them were. And without my caregiving, I wouldn't have been able to have those times. So when we gift other people opportunities to help, we're gifting them that sense of purpose, that sense of caring. We're letting, nobody wants love to be a one-sided thing. And so we can't tell our friends that we love and value them and then absolutely refuse them entry into our lives. And so letting them help is validating that friendship and family members. It helps them to feel connected to us because they can see that we're going through something hard. And it also helps, that's the biggest thing when you're overwhelmed, trying to come up with something on the spot just isn't going to happen. Just acknowledge when you're overwhelmed, our brains don't think this quickly. They just don't. That's just normal. And I've been through it. I think other people here have probably been through it. I know a lot of people in my care, that I work with that are caregivers. When you're overwhelmed by so much going on, it's impossible to just be able to say, oh, well, I'm going to do this for self-care. It's easier if we think about, a whole list, just brainstorm. And even if it's just take my coffee outside on the front porch because the sun's shining today, that's self-care. That was what I did this morning. Powerful tools used as an action plan, like the support groups. Support groups are great. We'll talk about some of those as the next question comes around.
Excellent. Thank you all. Beth, I hope you don't mind talking again right away. We're kind of making my little circle around here for the third question. And that's, how do we ask for help when we identify as the responsible one in the family who does everything well? So you're the one who's the best at it. Keeping up this facade can be double draining. What can you do?
As the person that was the two-year-old stomping my feet and saying I do it myself, I can definitely empathize with that. I think the biggest thing is reframing it to letting other people, giving them the gift of those memories, letting them be part of the experience, letting them have an opportunity to spend time too, either with you or with the mutual loved one, so that they have that opportunity to do something too. I didn't realize until after I finished caregiving for my dad that by doing so much, I didn't give an opportunity to some of my siblings that could have had that time with him. And I didn't mean to, hog my father, but in some ways I did, because I thought I was the only one that could do anything. And so understanding that when we decide that we're the only one that can do it, we're also closing off some people who might really want that time and want to have those memories. The other thing is to acknowledge our cultural differences. There are definitely, in America in particular, but in a lot of other cultures, this idea that we have to be independent, that we have to do it, that to admit that we want help or need help is a failure. It's not a failure. Again, it's about shared opportunity and shared love. And when we close that door to help, we're really limiting what the relationship's going to be with other people. And it's self-isolating. And self-isolation is, again, another warning sign that will lead down the road to caregiver burnout. And so in order to make it through the marathon and not collapse on the sidelines, it's important to get that.
I wanted to add to what Beth had said, because there was a question on the chat about what advice to give to a friend filled with guilt, having to put his mother in assisted care. And I think Beth could probably speak better than me on that. And all I wanted to say, and I would like to give it back to Beth to offer some advice. But I really like, Beth, what you said about the gift that it is allowing other people to be of service, to be kind and to be thoughtful when they, especially when they've asked. And I also invite people to rephrase the questions that they ask, because if somebody is really upset and has just gotten news or is dealing with something and is feeling in crisis in that moment, that's not the time probably to ask them. They can think clearly. And many of us, when we're asked, what can I do for you? That's such a broad questions that maybe what I really need is somebody to do my laundry, but I'm not going to say that because I don't want anybody going through my underwear and my personal things. So to be more specific without going too specific, but you can say, can I run an errand for you? Or is there anything I can pick up at the store? And for this person that had that concern, I think that the gift, that maybe reframing it, that is not that he or she's giving up on mom or dad, but that because they love them so much that they're willing to go through the pain and discomfort of letting him or her go into a facility where they can give them much better care than they can. And in the Latino community, that's particularly difficult because we just don't. So how do you negotiate understanding that your love at some point may not be all that person needs? They might need other things, and that you're willing to sacrifice, because it's painful. It's a hard decision. You're willing to sacrifice having them near for their well-being, and many times also for the well-being of the family caring for them. So I don't know, Beth, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Absolutely. The thing about putting someone in, deciding to make that decision to put somebody in care is, one, it's a very individual situation. And guilt is something that, so there's a difference between regret and guilt. Guilt is not a productive emotion. Guilt is something, it's sort of a way to kind of beat ourselves up for a decision we made. Does the person regret putting them there? Probably not. Because that person, they did what was the best decision they could at the time. And situations change. The biggest thing that I always tell people is, you're making the very best decision you can with the knowledge and information you have right now. And to acknowledge that is important, because our situations do change day to day, sometimes minute to minute. And as we're making these decisions, knowing whether we regret it or not is important. If we feel guilt, we have to figure out why. Is it something we did? Is it something we can change? Okay, he's made the decision, or she has made the decision to put someone in care. They did it, as Sandra said, for reasons that the person needed more help than the loved one could provide. Sometimes it's because the loved one is just burnt out, and that's valid too. It's important to acknowledge that the caregiver is allowed to have needs, and their life situation can demand they make difficult choices. It will demand. That's part of the caregiver journey. Difficult choices come with it. And making the decision to place someone is one of the hardest possible. Support groups are very helpful in that because other people have faced those decisions. Powerful Tools for Caregivers is another one because we talk about it. And there are things that can still make those, just because someone's placed doesn't mean that the experience, the love ends. You still get to provide love and time. And sometimes you're able to do it better because you're not doing the day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute care. You can have some quality time when you're able to be whatever your relationship is besides just caregiver, whether it's daughter, son, parent, grandparent, it does spouse. I work with a lot of spouses that have to place. And sometimes it's for physical reasons, but sometimes it's just because they can't do it anymore. And that's valid too. Not everybody can do it all the time forever. Everybody has their limits, and everybody's limit depends on the very specific situation. Beware of the shoulds. When you start hearing, well, I should be able to do it at home, whether you're saying it to yourself or somebody else is saying it to you, because could and would are helpful. And I encourage everyone, when everybody has advice, and I try really hard not to give you advice, but to give you options. There's a difference. And the difference is with options, you have choices. With advice, there's a lot of guilt that can go with it. And we don't mean to do it that way. We're trying to be helpful. And if people are giving you a lot of unhelpful advice, it's okay to say, I know you're trying to help, but this isn't helping. Because they want to know. They're trying to help. So if they're doing something that's causing harm, helping them to learn so that they can do better is important. And so that communication is important too. I hope that helped.
I was just going to touch on the, circle back to the question about being the responsible one and in the family, and maintaining a facade. I just real briefly, when I heard that question, I felt that to truly define yourself as the responsible one, you want to be real, and I think within the family, everybody handles the caregiving challenge a little differently. But I think, if you're really real and you're open yourself up to, the possibility of new dimensions to yourself, and you have a forum where you can share, you can elevate, all boats, so to speak. So, being the responsible one, I would say, question why you have put yourself in that role, and try to share the burden within the family, and have others be responsible as well. I think it's elevating it to a level where you are not the sole caregiver is very important. And it could be in situations like with just to bring it home, like we'll have a course that's offered through the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and it really is most effective in terms of care when both the husband and the wife, if they're caring for a child, they both are attending and they're both going through the whole program rather than one or the other. So I think it's spread out the caregiving when you can, have a forum of exchange, lean on each other, try not to be the sole caregiver. Look out for yourself all the time, practice self-care, but if you can, try and not be in a position where you are the solely responsible caregiver.
I just thought of an analogy to that, Keith, where if you take it's about the footprint in the sand. So one very, if it's 1 inch in diameter, it's more likely to push all the way down deep and sink into the sand. If you spread it out to a foot in diameter, you can put a lot more weight on it. So the wider the footprint, the more weight, the more it can carry. And so remember that when it comes to caregiving too.
Did you just come up with that?
You inspired me.
Oh, wow, I like that. No, I mean, it makes really good sense. I like it. I want to use it.
All right, we have one more pre-chosen question for all of you, and I'm just going to kind of put it out there, and whoever wants to answer it first can go ahead and answer it first. We're facing an epidemic of Alzheimer's and other dementias. How do we take care of ourselves so that we can care for someone else with these conditions? And what support will we need to plan for?
I was just going to say, I'm probably going to defer to my fellow panelists on this one. I don't have a lot of expertise, or I don't have a lot of experience in this realm.
Take it away, Beth.
Okay, well, actually, I do have a lot of experience in this realm. There's part of caring for yourself when dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's is understanding that it does carry with it a stigma that isn't right, it isn't fair, but it is treated differently than something like heart disease or cancer or some of the other illnesses. Anything that has to do with cognitive function, which includes mental health, comes with a stigma. The resources and what it's going to take to go the long haul is different. One of the things I strongly recommend people who have that diagnosis is, first and foremost, go ahead while the family member is still capable to get your durable power of attorney. End of Life Washington has one that actually includes questions about Alzheimer's and dementia and what that person's wants and wishes are. The more information you have on that early on and from the person who has the illness, the better you'll feel, the power of attorney feels when it comes to making those decisions. It's important to have that communication and that discussion while they're still capable. And so then another thing is, as they go forward to look, there's a great book, jumping to another subject. There's a great book, The 36-Hour Day. And that's how it can feel like being a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia. It's one that in my support groups, people recommend to each other day in and day out. It's got a lot of good resources. And there's also one that we utilize in our grief support group, The Edge of Sorrow. And that one is also a good one because the grief process with that disease in particular is slower. It goes on longer because it starts early. It starts every time their personality starts to change. There's support groups for it. I have learned most of what I end up sharing with other people comes from the people I learned from in support group. We learn from each other what their experiences are, suggestions as to, well, you should try this in this situation. This might work. This worked for other people. Whether it's suggesting that spouses shower together because they can't get their loved one to shower, or it's too physically challenging to shower them. There's just so many different specific examples that could come up that we get through support group, because even if they haven't experienced it, they may know somebody who has. And that networking is really important in learning how to manage that illness. The other thing is a long-term financial plan. Sadly, most people who have dementia or Alzheimer's at some point are going to end up on Medicaid. And so, especially for spouses, it becomes essential to do that earlier, to at least have the conversation and look at the plan, because you don't want to end up where you've gone through every last dime and now the caregiver has nothing to live on. And also, if they're going to be placed, if that decision has to be made, it's important to be able to look at what the finances are going to be, and if the facility is going to accept Medicaid, if the finances run out, and making sure that they're putting their money to someplace, if they think their money is ever going to run out, that they're putting someone in a facility that will accept Medicaid, because once it's hard to find a Medicaid, what's called a straight Medicaid bed. And so Medicaid's the federally funded program that helps to pay for care. And well, it's matched by the state, so it's a joint program. And those are things that any family caregiver support program should be able to help connect with and at least discuss what the program's limitations are, what they're looking at, and help make long-term plans. That's part of what family caregiver support does. And they can be reached again through home and community services at the WashingtonConnection.org. Those programs are really essential when you're working with Alzheimer's dementia. It's a long haul illness. I also want to mention palliative care. There are very few things. It's challenging to get hospice for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia, because a lot of doctors in general hate to have the end of death conversations. We're in a lot of doctors feel like they're admitting defeat if they say somebody's going to actually, die in 6 months. We don't have a crystal ball, so nobody really likes to be the person to make that judgment. And palliative care, what it does and how it differs, I tell people palliative care is all about what's the quality of life. Palliative care that is one of the few that works with Alzheimer's dementia. They can be referred fairly early on, but because they work with it on a regular basis, they're also aware with how other medications for other illnesses can react to the dementia and Alzheimer's, because the brain handles medication differently once it becomes ill with Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's important to have the medical team on board fairly early. The other difference is that palliative care, when it gets to the point where somebody is difficult even to get to a doctor, it may be that they could physically get there, but good luck convincing the person to go. Then palliative care can come to the home. Also, palliative care is the perfect ones to decide if the person needs hospice or not, because they're more familiar with the disease progression of Alzheimer's and dementia. So all of those things are part of the support plan. You can't take finances and medical and caregiving when you're dealing with that illness, without combining all of them and being able to have the open and honest communication. Support groups are a great resource. I know Keith has talked about this, and Sandra and I, but support group has so much going on for it. I'll put a plug in for Island Senior Resources. Ours are online right now, and the person who facilitates it most of the time, Mel Watson, is phenomenal at it. I facilitate it 1 week out of every month, but we offer them weekly, and that's fantastic. Parkinson's will often develop in dementia. Some of the other illnesses, cancer. My mom had cancer and ended up with dementia symptoms that came from the reduced oxygen to her brain. That can also happen with some of the lung and brain diseases. So just because somebody doesn't have a diagnosis of dementia doesn't mean that the short-term memory, the confusion, disorientation, sometimes even hallucinations may not come into play. And dementia support groups can still help with those things too. You don't have to come in with some card that says this diagnosis has happened. You're just experiencing the disease. That's all you need. No membership required.
Thank you, Beth. I know that was a more specialized question. So we have a number of questions that have come in from our audience tonight, and I'm going to go through some of these. We have just about 15 more minutes, so I think we've got the right number of questions for the time that we have. Here's one that goes along with, you were talking about, if you can, don't be the sole caregiver. And someone has asked, how do you encourage family caregivers to hang in there during the pandemic when they live out of state and we're unable to visit to help them? So the pandemic has created a situation where someone might be stuck as a sole caregiver where they wouldn't normally. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, that is a challenge, I, along with everyone else, looking forward to the next few months and having COVID behind us. There's no question that it is really thrown a monkey wrench in the way we provide support and care for our family members. I would say, be creative, any way, if do your best to share it, figure out, strategize about ways to do that, whether it's, phone calls, Zoom, family meetings, email exchanges, text messages. It's a whole different way of communicating nowadays. But and there are pros and cons to it. But I think you just got to be creative. You can't have yourself be in a position where it is all coming back to you. I think it's reach out to your fellow siblings or your anybody else in the family and just say, hey, can you connect here with this person, just to diversify it and mix it up. So those are kind of my initial thoughts on that. Open it up to others.
Share information and resources with them. Remember, family caregiver support is a national program. So even if I get calls from people locally that I look it up, family caregiver support in Google and whatever county they live in, and give them the information to how to connect to family caregiver support wherever their loved ones are. That can help them connect to resources. Again, the Powerful Tools for Caregiver classes that are listed on that website, they can find one somewhere, hopefully, that they can connect to. Often now, several of them are being offered through Zoom. So sometimes family members from a distance can pay for respite care. So somebody comes in and gives them a break. Sometimes family members from a distance can arrange for, a surprise dinner delivery, or, I've had them work with me long distance to connect to Meals on Wheels for loved ones, or medical transportation. If you haven't heard of volunteer medical transportation, that's a phenomenal program because the caregiver and the caregiver receiver can both be transported to doctor's appointments. Here on Whidbey Island, you can make an arrangement and get transportation to Seattle or Bellingham. And the caregiver gets to sit in the back seat with their care receiver and not have to figure out traffic or where to park. And they can just be there in the car, which can sometimes be a really nice break. So it's the being creative, helping them to find those resources, helping them to connect to those resources. I get calls from family from all over the world sometimes. I think the furthest one was Russia at this point, where they were looking to try to help a local family member, but they couldn't do it from where they were. So if you're the one who's at a distance, reach out to your local family caregiver support and say, hey, can you help me connect? And if you're not, or connect to a different one, help them use the internet, find somebody there so that you're giving them real resources rather than just shoulds. That's the one thing to be careful of. Give choices and options, and being willing to acknowledge that they may not be ready for some of it yet, but you just plant those seeds, and when they are, be willing to help them to find those resources.
Yeah, I had a quick thought that just popped into my head because I had an email exchange just yesterday from a caregiver that said, you know, my loved one lives alone, lives with a mental illness. Can somebody email her just so that she knows that she's not alone in this? So, I mean, it's like, so this is like the mother is saying, the caregiver is saying, you know, I can't provide the type of support that my daughter needs at this moment, and she's living alone. I'm thinking that maybe even email exchanges with others will at least start to build that little, you know, work those support muscles. So I think it's really, the call is to think outside the box, you know, and this is the kind of thing, like, you know, you bring this type of question to a support group, and, you know, you say, you know, I am, you know, how do I do this? And, you know, that's the beauty of it is, you know, you bring it before that forum and open it up for discussion, and the magic appears on the other side. So that's that's a little additional.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is the thing about support group, it's not just your ideas, it's the ideas of, you know, everybody in the room and their combined wisdom and experience. So that makes a big difference. So the Aging and Disability Resource Program that is available helps people to be screened for services. So sometimes if you're trying to help figure out, well, would my family member even qualify? Those people, that's what they do. That's their expertise. And they can help brainstorm options. Family caregiver support is just one part of aging and disability resources. So the way one of my friends used to refer to it as aging and disability resources, their information is 1 inch deep, but a mile wide. Family caregiver support, we're more like a mile deep in 100 yards wide. So it's a little bit different. And so learning what some of these things are is helpful, but I don't expect you to know all the answers. That's why we have helplines.
Sandra, did you want to add anything for the long distance family members?
I actually feel a little guilty because I have family overseas and out of town that will benefit very much for all this information that Keith and Beth are sharing. So I think that they have covered it very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Keith, there's a specific question for you asking about the NAMI family support groups. And they're wondering if anyone can attend and how can they feel safe sharing very private family matters?
So great question. Yeah, all our programs are free. Anyone can attend. The beauty, I mean, the silver lining, if there is one in the COVID dynamic, is that there are virtual offerings across the state. So for instance, if somebody, you know, wants to attend a family support group in Spokane, you know, on a Tuesday night, because that works in their schedule, they can do that. They just register. And right off the bat, when those support groups are held, there are group guidelines and principles, and, you know, everybody that participates in those support groups agrees to, you know, absolute confidentiality. So, you know, that's the way, you know, that type of issue is handled in a support group is that, everybody agrees to going in that, what is said here stays here. So, and then they, ask everybody, do you agree? And then you kick off the actual support group. So there are, the group guidelines and principles of support are the hallmarks that kick off every support group NAMI offers across the country. So they've learned that this is the best way to, establish the rules of interaction, so to speak.
Great, thank you. We have just a couple more questions, so we're rounding this out very nicely. One is also related to support groups, and you've mentioned the NAMI groups. Beth, you've mentioned the family support groups, but where else can people find support groups for caregivers in Snohomish County? Are there any other sources they can turn to? Maybe Sandra, do you know of others?
Not specifically for caregivers. Verdon does have a Spanish language support group for women, but we don't have a caregiver specific support group.
So since Snohomish County was mentioned specifically, I want to let you know about an amazing organization called Homage, HOMAGE. And they manage the Snohomish County Family Caregiver Support Program. Another nice thing is because Snohomish County opts to contract directly with this area association of aging, that they have more resources than a lot of other places. What you can get as far as benefits and services through them are really great. They do have support groups available. They have multiple length. One of the neat things about family caregiver support at Homage is they have a lot of very diverse cultural experience, and they have representatives that are multilingual. And so that is a really great resource. They're also, the Alzheimer's Association has their own 24/7 hotline. They also have their own support groups. And Facebook, you can find some family caregiver support groups through them as well.
Yeah, and I think that it looked like there was some chat activity addressing that question too. So I'm confident that you can that there's a comprehensive list of support services that is available. If you want to, I could certainly follow up and send something along those lines out.
Yep, it looks like too that Attendee has showed the ARC of Snohomish County offers parent-to-parent support and support groups for parents and caregivers and individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Yeah.
So great. And super. We've just shared that out with everyone. Okay, we have one last question before we wrap up. And I think this is a great question. They're asking, what are ways to grieve the losses that one experiences as a caregiver, the loss of freedom and opportunities that might arise?
So could you say that one more time?
Sure. What are the ways to grieve the losses that one experiences as a caregiver? For example, the loss of freedom and opportunities.
I think that as any loss in this country, we're still learning how to grieve. There is this expectation that we need to be as stoic, and we see on television and on social media people dealing with all kinds of things, and they're all together, makeup on, hair on, and that's not the reality of what happens on the ground. So I think that acknowledging that there are losses, and you're discovering losses as you walk the path, and what you're grieving today might be different than what you come to grieve a year from now. So having support for that and having a place, whether it's a support group or a therapist or a friend that you can share with, that somebody who can be empathetic and understand that if you're losing someone, that sometimes you need also a space, a safe space to express those feelings and things that you might feel guilty even feeling, but that there is a safe space. And I wonder, Beth, if you have any thoughts, or Keith, about that.
I think you nailed it when you said acknowledge. Just, I think everything you said was spot on.
Yeah, naming it is a big part of it. Being willing to acknowledge and accept that this is a reality, and it's valid, that these feelings of loss and grief are valid. A lot of people feel like you're not supposed to grieve until after somebody's dead. And the reality is we have a lot of small losses that happen along the way. I mean, there's the additional stress and loss of just what our plan was. We all have these grand plans of what retirement's going to be or what our life is going to be, these expectations. And when those fall, they cause grief. And that's normal. We have a great support group at Island Senior Resources that's twice a month, that is about grief. And it doesn't require an actual death to come to. A lot of the grief support groups are really designed for 6 months after death. That's what most of the ones run by hospice are, because they figure the first 6 months you're kind of, I don't even remember some of it after the first 6 months period. It was just so overwhelming. There's a lot of things that I don't even remember from that period, because it's just, it's so focused on what's putting that next foot in front of you. And the other thing is that grief has a way of just blindsiding you. Just when you think you're past it, something can trigger it. And that also is normal. And to accept and not judge ourselves for it is hard. We have so many expectations, and a lot of them are unrealistic for ourselves. And so giving ourselves that grace to feel what we feel when we feel it. You are where you are right now.
Excellent. Thank you, Beth. I think that's a very nice way to wrap up for this evening. We just need to remember to be kind to ourselves too, and acknowledge all of these things. I think the pandemic has been an interesting learning experience for all of us. And hopefully as we come out of it, it will be easier going forward to maintain some of these habits of talking more with others and sharing our feelings and acknowledging when things, maybe it's okay to not feel okay. So
Exactly.
we're going to wrap up tonight. Thank you, Keith and Sandra and Beth. I'm going to go ahead and share my little acknowledgement screen. We're so happy that you came to join us tonight. I really just like this so much, just listening to the three of you talk tonight. Thank you, the three of you. We'll be talking with you again soon. All right. So we hope all of our attendees tonight, thank you, that you've enjoyed tonight's program and have gained valuable information for yourself and your family. To learn more about Issues That Matter, please visit snowisle.org, Issues That Matter. And a reminder, our final event is Care for Kids, Care for Yourself. That is this Saturday at 10 a.m., March 13th. Finally, we want to thank the following organizations for their support of Issues That Matter: Snohomish County Behavioral Health Services, Island County Human Services, and the Snow Isle Libraries Foundation. Thank you and have a great evening.